What's up, Brozones? Welcome to the Ozone and welcome to another FNAF reaction video. Today it is my birthday! Woo! Just in case you wanted to know and you wanted to celebrate in the comments. Yeah, it's my birthday. I have a birthday king crown and I am ready to watch the FNAF King Hyperdroid because Hyperdroid has uploaded yesterday I Solved FNAF's Biggest Mystery Part 2. So I recall that we watched this first part. We watched the first part of this like mini series, I guess, on the survival logbook. We did a reaction video to it, and I thought it was fantastic. I thought that Hyperdroid had some really good points. I think that there are still like a few small flaws with it, but it doesn't discount the fact that the rest of the theory was fantastic. And I even had some points to add to it in my reaction. I think I would need to rewatch to kind of remember, but it is really cool that he is coming back to this with possibly more evidence, possibly some more information on all of this, and I would love to see it because the survival logbook is one of the coolest things in the FNAF franchise, and I think it is underappreciated and not looked at enough. So let's get straight into this video. I Solved FNAF's Biggest Mystery Part 2 Survival Logbook Theory Continue. Let's go.
A couple months ago, I claimed to have solved the survival logbook and revealed the crying child's real name in the Foxy grid by matching the crying child's only 4 responses to 4 of Cassidy's many statements.
Yeah.
Then I used the page number of Cassidy's questions to get a coordinate and insert it into the Foxy grid to get each letter, which in the order of his responses made VAD. Then I used the constant reminders to reflect something, mainly the giant in-your-face mirror, to reverse the letters to get Dave.
I am still baffled at the... I mean, the video was structured so well. I am so baffled at the reflect kind of clue on all of this, where you have to reverse the letters of the word. And to be completely honest, like, since making that reaction video, and that was a while ago, that was like... Was it 2 months ago? It was quite a while ago. I have thought about it occasionally. And while I don't use Dave as a name to almost replace using the name The Crying Child, I kind of have it in my mind where it's like, yes, that is the true solution, which is a really good sign because these sorts of theories, especially theories to do with like characters' names and stuff, they really have to kind of mature in the community and stuff like that in order for you to kind of utilize it in theories and stuff like that. And I really feel like these days, if you refer to Dave Afton, people are going to know you're talking about the crying child and stuff like that. So I think it's evolving well. I think there is still a lot of work to do on it, but I think that since making that video, I've been completely fine with the name Dave. I think it is a perfect fit. So, and now I remember actually what I said to Hyperdroid. One of my big points that I brought up on Twitter as well is that something was based on tally marks, and I think that there were 7 sets of 5 tally marks, and 7 letters in the name Cassidy, and Cassidy is one of the 5 missing children, which is why it's groups of 5, and then Dave has the 4 individual slashes signifying that he is the other one. Yeah, and he has 4 letters in his name. So I hope that he'll explain it better than me in this video. I'll hope that he'll bring it up, but I'll put the tweet on the screen or something so that you can read it. Anyway, let's continue.
The crying child's name. This isn't the first time Dave has been used either, as William Afton's alias in the series is named Dave, even as recently as the new FNAF book the week before seemingly referencing it, meaning he possibly took his dead son's name, something with a lot of emotional charge, as a way to disguise himself. Later on, I also gave my solution to the infamous tally marks, which I connected to the first page with my name on it, and I theorized that they were actually meant to be how we started the search for Cassidy's name, as the Foxy grid was used for the crying child's name instead.
It's a very clever a puzzle.
I've discovered some more and new evidence to back both solutions up at the same time, share some things you may have missed, and I also wanted to go more in depth into the main 4 stages.
Cool, yes, that's the main problem.
They were a little too much of a stretch. So subscribe so maybe we hit 250k before the end of the year.
250k.
Turn on notifications and let's get into it. In the last video, I proposed that the tally marks were meant to be the catalyst to the hunt for the Cassidy name search, which surprisingly a lot of people seem to actually agree with.
Good.
Although after looking back through everything, I noticed something big.
I think, actually, and I'm sorry to cut him off here, I think that the tally marks are big, but like the thing is, what is, I think the big question around all of this is what's the bigger picture surrounding the survival logbook? What was the intent of the survival logbook from Scott Cawthon? What was he trying to tell us? And it was clear that this survival logbook was created to tell us there is Michael Afton, and it was to help build his character and show, like, you know, things like he is sort of remorseful for the bite of 83, and he chews gum and stuff like that. It's things that kind of he sets in stone then so that he can use later on. And then the other thing that he set up was that there's 2 souls interacting in this logbook, and our quest in this logbook is to find out who those souls are. And I think it is therefore perfect that literally in the middle of the book, I don't have it on me, but in the middle of the book, you have one word search, and then you have the mirror. One of them is Cassidy, one of them is Dave. They are talking to each other. It is so good. It is like metaphorically perfect. And I think that that's what Scott Cawthon was trying to tell us using this book, as well as a few more additional small things. But there you go.
The puzzles for Cassidy and Dave are actually more connected than we realized, by being completely different. That may sound very confusing, so let me just explain. Cassidy's solution seems to be all about using numbers specifically.
Yes.
And the numbered tally marks to begin it, like I've theorized.
It's consistent. It is consistent.
Are obtained via the number connections throughout the logbook, such as the altered page numbers, the random numbers in the book itself, and numbers Mike's written in.
It works.
The solution, however, then happens to be all about using text. From the ABC to begin it, to how all the coordinates are obtained via words. Using the questions...
I actually haven't heard that before, numbers versus text.
Just happen to be the exact opposite of each other. Then remember that the way to solve Cassidy's name is by using an altered word search, while the way to solve Dave's name is by using the faded ABC grid, both the numbers fading out and the faded text on the grid itself.
That's a really good point.
That the entire logbook makes it clear as day that Cassidy was the faded text, while Dave, the crying child, was the altered text. They're helping the other remember them.
Yeah!
Using the exact opposite solutions to solve them both.
Oh, what he just said there, they're helping each other to remember. That makes so much sense, because in the book itself, I know one of the questions was, do you remember your name? And it's sort of like they're both, the party was for you. Stuff like that and like the carousel and stuff like that. But like they're kind of interacting with each other and trying to help each other to regain their memory. And I really like that detail that Hyperdroid has just thrown in there. I feel like that's going to be a very underrated part of this video, is the fact that you require Cassidy's method in Dave's method in order to find Dave's name. And you require Dave's method in Cassidy's grid to find Cassidy's name, etc. I think that's really cool, that they're sort of helping each other to find themselves. That's cool.
Then also, something fellow YouTuber Ozone mentioned in his reaction to my video is that the tally marks happen to be 7 tallies, while there's 1 tally of 4, which Cassidy's name happens to be 7 letters long, and she's
7 letters long.
The missing children incident, while Dave's name happens to be 4
Dave
letters
is
long,
4 letters long.
separately / ungrouped. But wait, you just swapped the methods for the 2.
Hey! I did not know I was going to get a shout out in this. Wow. I hoped that he would at least bring that up, but thank you for the shout out, Hyperdroid. I know you're probably watching this. That was cool. So yeah, so that was my point, and he explained it so much more concise than me. Oh my gosh. So yeah, Cassidy has 7 letters in it. There are 7 tally marks, sets of 5, and then Dave has 4 letters, and then there are an extra 4 tally marks. So I think that although those tally marks are to take you to the page with my name on it, even though that's the case, it's also telling you that there are two characters here. One of them is represented by the 5 tally marks, and one is represented by the other 4. It's really cool. I love it.
Grouped. But wait, you just swapped the methods for the two. Precisely my point. For the 3rd time, the exact opposite solution is used between the two, further proving the intentionality of it all. But
yeah.
Now I would like to give quite a hot take to spice this video up that I noticed right after the video was out.
Okay.
Here we go. How we get Dave is actually more consistent and solid than how we get Cassidy. Seriously, let me explain.
Okay.
Dave is very simply the page number of the statement that's responded to for all 4 letters. Which, while yes, some use context clues, that doesn't change the fact that it uses the same exact method for all 4 letters, putting a statement to a response. Cassidy, on the other hand, uses altered page numbers for the first couple, but then suddenly it uses
Cassidy's puzzle is a mess.
Random numbers on a chalkboard in the book itself that requires you to put 3 numbers together in order to get the final number to solve
You're
the
right,
letter,
you're
which
right.
none of the other letters require. Then there's random highlighted numbers, and finally numbers that Mike himself writes into the book that isn't even out of place or anything like the other letters were.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point actually, because let's say like it's almost like storytelling. Like, say Mike were never to become a security guard. Say Mike never picked up the security logbook. It's almost like Cassidy wouldn't be able to utilize it. I don't know. It's just really weird for Cassidy to specifically use some of Michael's writing as a clue to who she is, ooh, that's an interesting thought. If we're talking about like Dave and Cassidy helping each other to bring their memory back, maybe it's Dave that used Michael's handwriting to show Cassidy what her name was and stuff. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts running through my head. I'm sorry if I'm not being very concise with them and not explaining them very well. Let's just get through most of the video and then we'll talk around the end especially.
Mike even writes other numbers throughout the logbook too that aren't even used for this solution. So in conclusion, we have Dave, which has 4 letters using the exact same method. The only possible difference you could say is that the first and final letters both use a visual clue, sure. While Cassidy has 4 letters using the same method, but then the other 4 letters are using completely different methods. The only connection between them being numbers.
Yeah.
This isn't to say Cassidy is wrong at all. In fact, I think Scott mentioning the name as the most accurate movie screenplay outright confirms that it's the right name, as well as using the name in the novel trilogy for one of the missing children. But my point is that Dave has actually gotten more consistently and solid than Cassidy is, despite the Dave solution being framed by some as more complicated, as having more problems in its solution, and as a code that doesn't work.
Okay, I'm sorry to pause once again. It just Hyperdroid gets through so much in such little time, and I think it's really, really cool that he's able to do that. I wish I could do that, to be honest. So what was I going to say? I was going to say that people say, yes, absolutely, that the Dave solution doesn't work at all. Here's the thing. I don't think it's a question of whether Dave's solution works or not, because it absolutely freaking does. If anything, Hyperdroid has just summed it up so nicely there. It does work 100%. I think the big question you should be thinking about is, was this intentional? Like, was this the solution that we were supposed to get? And we keep finding more and more things, like the tally marks that I point out, that kind of just bring it all together and tell us that this probably was something that Scott Cawthon put together as a puzzle. It was a pretty flawed puzzle, but it was a puzzle nevertheless. And as I was saying before, when Hyperdroid put the intentionality word in red, that is the big question here. It's not whether it works, it's whether it was intentional. And I think that is, that's a big, like, it's great if your theory works. It's great if nobody can really like debunk your theory, but the next step to that, the next level, is whether Scott Cawthon intended for that to be the solution or not. So that's, yeah, I think that's my big point there.
I think in becoming so used to Cassidy being solved, we've forgotten what the mix and matching path to get to it actually was in the first place.
That graphic
as well as
there,
how some parts of it were literally just guessed after trying and failing multiple things, including the whole final put it into the word search grid solve itself, which had no hints towards it and was just tried since the Foxy grid was coming.
It was crazy that we found that.
The two and looking for
so crazy.
Something that I noticed that I can't believe I missed the first time, which I just mentioned, is that both of these puzzles just happen to be completely fine for most of their solutions. But then suddenly, for both of their final letters, they suddenly and out of nowhere require Mike's input to help. For Cassidy's, it's Mike's 811.
I was just talking about this.
It's Mike's nightmare drawing to get the correct answer for the correct coordinate. Both puzzles quite literally end in the exact same way, reflecting each other again. That's so important, and everyone missed it. Even I did. Both solutions. So
Michael helps them to remember who they are.
Require Mike's input to get their final letter, and to bring both puzzles to a close. I don't know how I missed this. But let's take a step back and review the biggest issue proposed with the Dave solution.
That's really good.
Even solved into Dave, mainly about the responses to the questions themselves being a bit shaky. So let's actually go through them thoroughly one by one to ensure that these are likely the correct statements that the crying child is responding to. Although before any of this, why would we even assume that we're looking for the crying child's name? Well, very simply, the person we know is asking who we know is the crying child, do you remember your name?
Yeah.
In the exact same book where a bunch of my names were a hint.
There's a lot of crying child imagery and
how do we then
themes.
assume that we get anything from attaching Cassidy's statements to the crying child's responses? Well, not only do we know that there's a puzzle focused on text thanks to the Foxy grid itself, unlike Cassidy's puzzle which is heavily focused on numbers, but it's also the fact that Cassidy makes 11 statements, most questions, yet the crying child only provides 4 responses, seemingly making these 4 responses important for some reason in some way. So we have only 4 mysteriously important responses to the countless statements made throughout the book, and also a puzzle that requires a focus on text specifically to solve and not numbers. So simply put 2 and 2 together to notice that we need to use the only 4 important conversations between the 2 to help get us our Foxy grid solved for the other conversator's name. But moving on to the statements and responses themselves. First is does he still talk to you, with the response I can hear sounds. Now this one already sounds a bit iffy. Although something a lot of people missed, even I did, is that this actually uses a context clue to figure out the correct response. With the process of elimination, we know that the auditory answer, I can hear sounds, would either be responding to the auditory questions, does he still talk to you, or is this song familiar to you? But how do we choose which one is the correct one? Easy. One question is directly and undeniably linked with the crying child when it's matched together with the image right next to it, the infamous Fredbear plush. The other question, however, is asking whether the crying child has ever heard whatever song it is, and therefore has no feasible connection to him at all. He may have never even heard it. It's literally Occam's razor to a T. If you have 2 competing ideas to explain the same phenomenon, you should prefer the simpler one. So which one do we pick? The one that uses a visual clue to simply connect it back to the crying child.
I like that. I like the proposition almost that there is one question that is more right than the other. And by that I mean, yes, we do have one with the Freddy plushie and it's does he still talk to you? Then we have one that's like about music and stuff like that, and it doesn't make sense. So obviously we would opt for the other one. So it's sort of like, yes, Cassidy's asking all of these questions, but some of them are kind of like red herrings in a way. And that is the puzzle. The puzzle is to match them correctly. So interesting. I'm enjoying this discussion, actually.
It also makes sense in general when we learn that in FNAF World, the same voice from the Fredbear plush at the end of FNAF 4 is still talking to the crying child, and so he would still be hearing it. The only other argument I've seen for this one specifically being wrong is that it just seems weird conversation-wise, which I personally don't see as a debunk, as to me it makes sense. Does he still talk to you? Refer to the Fredbear plush. I can hear sounds. Not only this, but the visual clue right next to it is also used to directly answer who the he is in the question itself. Is it Afton, Michael, equals someone else? Who is the he that's apparently still talking to him? Cassidy's question is only made clearer with the image right next to it, which is very important to keep in mind for later. Next is the party was.
I'm still a bit iffy on the question and answer, but
a simple one, and I feel like I don't need to go too in depth into it. It's almost undeniable that those two connect directly. Yeah. Then we get what do you see with the response I can't see. Again, another simple one that is almost undeniably connected. Although this one actually also includes a context clue if you're somehow not sure, which, like the Fredbear plush, just happens to be right next to the question itself. Then finally we have do you have
shows that it's connected to the mirror as well, yeah.
This is the big one, and what this entire theory depends upon. Although I personally think it's actually quite easy. Just like the Fredbear plush, and I guess the mirror, in order to link it with the crying child and
Nightmare
to get the correct
Fredbear
question, you simply use the in-your-face image of Nightmare, which just happens to be right next to the question itself again, and just happens to be classified as a dream instead of a nightmare, just to get the point across even more. Under the perspective of a puzzle maker, that in itself is a very direct and clear visual clue provided for us to put the question together with the image, to get the final and seemingly correct corresponding answer, I'm scared. To me, this is actually very simple, with almost no complication needed. I get you may think it's weird to use a context clue, but the Fredbear plush actually does the same thing to ensure that you get the correct question, and this clue specifically had 2 entire pages to be drawn on. Yet it just happens to be drawn literally right underneath the question itself. If Nightmare was on the other page, sure, it's more stretchy, but it's right underneath it to put it all together.
I do agree.
Dreams? Refer to the nightmare imagery. I'm scared. Cassidy's question is only made clear and connected with the crying child by using the image right next to it.
The visual imagery there, yeah, it works. Or at least it's a lot better than just the text by itself. And I think that is exactly the point that Hyperdroid is trying to make here. It's undeniable, man. It's so good. Hyperdroid has cooked. Hyperdroid has cooked so good. Man, wow, I wish I could cook this much. Or this well. I don't know. I don't know where that metaphor is going or analogy, but there you go. I do like this a lot. That really helps actually to kind of to bring it together a little bit more, because yeah, when we were just looking at the questions and answers, it did seem a little bit disjointed. But now with the visual indicators, the Fredbear plush and the Nightmare Fredbear, or just Nightmare, whatever. Now with those visual indicators, it makes a lot more sense why it's I'm scared and I can hear sounds. I can hear sounds to me is the least convincing, because like I'm scared works really well with Nightmare or Nightmare. So yeah, I like this. 2 minutes to go. Let's watch the rest of the video.
Again, the start and end of this solution both use a visual clue. Also, if you think it's odd because it uses Mike's input for the final letter, like I mentioned earlier, that just happens to be the exact same thing that happens for Cassidy's.
So what does that mean?
The 2 puzzles mirror each other. Then finally, after you have all 4 letters in the order of Crying Child's answers, you use the countless mirror/reflection hints throughout with Evad to get a perfectly ordered and spelt out Dave. This is the biggest part of it to me. There's absolutely no brute forcing letters around required. I think everyone missed that. You literally don't have to force a single letter into place or switch anything up. It just perfectly becomes Dave in the correct order. Again, this mirror is right
really
next to
satisfying.
Cassidy, which I think is huge. Both names are solved right next to each other, making this, I think, the 5th example of these 2 puzzles being directly connected to each other in some way.
Exactly.
Honestly, if there's 999 failed attempts at this puzzle, and 1 attempt actually works but just requires a little stretching, although when combined with the visual/context clues shown directly to us, it's actually no longer a stretch, it seems like that one working solution might just be the right one. Especially when there is literally no proposed alternative. I just feel like if you open your mind and go through the solution again, you might realize it's actually not as complicated as some are making it seem. It's quite simple. In fact, I just proved earlier that it's more simple than Cassidy's ever was. Either way, I believe Dave is the name of the crying child, and that the tally marks in the logbook specifically are to begin Cassidy's name hunt. And while it is just a theory, it's what I'm going to be using going forward. Because I feel so sure about this. So sure that I've made this whole part 2 specifically for those who disagree, instead of just leaving it like I've done for every other theory on my channel thus far. Either way, that's all I have to say about this for now. Please go and watch the biggest FNAF video ever. That's a giant resource and guide for the entire community. FNAF the Supreme Guide. And I really hope that you all enjoyed this
I don't know how he does it.
And I may have even convinced more of you to believe that Dave is the crying child's real name. Have a great day, night, whatever time it is.
7:25.
Very soon.
Okay, anyway. That was... Dare I say it? It could have been better than the first video. I genuinely feel so hyped again about FNAF. It's things like this. Like, it's things like this, and not just good theories on the internet, but also respect on the internet that really gets me more motivated in the FNAF community. And I genuinely think if more people in the community had respect for others and actually listened to other people's theories, we would get this solved so much easier. Oh my gosh. But no, that was really good. And yeah, a lot of respect to Hyperdroid for making that video, because I saw a lot of hate that he was getting. It wasn't like mad hate. I just saw like the odd comment where it's like, this theory sucks. It doesn't work here. It doesn't work here. And I haven't seen one comment that he hasn't brought up again in this video. At least I can't think of any. And so I genuinely think, like, I don't know what did the comments say? Let's have a look at what the comments say. Yeah, the comments are saying this is a peak video, absolutely peak. And I'm seeing comments as well of people, and this is really nice to see actually. I'm seeing comments from people saying I wasn't convinced after the first video, but after this video, it sold me. And I think that that's really, really good. I have a lot of respect for those people. Some people are just completely closed-minded. You cannot change their opinion. Just don't talk to them. Just ignore them. Because it's people like that who hold on to their theories religiously, who, you know, it's not worth the trouble. So this was a great video. I really hope that you enjoyed my reaction to that. Thank you for the shout out, Hyperdroid. Very appreciated. This theory is doing well as well. It's got 35,000 views in 2 days. I thought this premiered 1 day ago, but no, it was 2 days ago. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in another video. Goodbye.